Hi friends, good evening. Welcome back. Let's today we will continue with the third class of the data function. In today's class, we will be covering two important aspects within data function. One is how to convert a given text to a column in Excel, and the second will be the data validation. So let's start with the first function, which is an easy one, that is the text to column. Most of the time when we are working on Excel, we know that we take the data from the third sources. Okay, now this data source can be another Excel or a spreadsheet file, in which case it is easy to copy the data because the data is arranged in a column manner, in a table manner rather. But when we are copying data directly from the internet site, or let's say from a Word doc or a PDF, if we want to copy a table, then most of the time the data, when we copy and paste the data into an Excel file, the data is not represented in a table format. Okay, so let's say if I copy a data from PDF and copy it, the data will be copied something like this. Okay, wherein you will have rather than 3 columns, one each for country, revenue and capitalization, you will see that the data is clustered in one single column. Okay, and which makes the data really unorganized and unusable. So but if I manually go and try and separate it into 3 columns, it will be a painful and a tedious task. But in Excel we have a very simple feature called text to column, which will help us convert this text to column. Okay, let's see how to do that. First I will select the data, okay, data which I want to convert from text to a column. I will go to the data tab, okay, and I will click on text to column within the data tools. Okay, the moment I click on this text to column, I see this window or the dialog box appearing. Okay, now there are two options in the first tab, delimited or fixed width. I will use fixed width only when the columns have a defined spaces in between, which will not be applicable in most of the cases. So I generally go with the delimited option. Okay, let's see what is the delimited option, and I click on the next button. Now I can use one or more of these delimiters to segregate my data into different columns. So there can be tab in between the data, there can be a semicolon, comma, space, each of this function or one or more of these functions. I can select multiple delimiters also. Okay, so if I see this data sample, okay, my segregator is comma. So I see that after every particular column or field I have a comma, right? So I will select my comma as a delimiter and I click on the next tab. You can also see the preview here, right? So I know that yes, my data has been segregated correctly. I click on the next tab. Okay, I can choose the format of my column. The most important thing here is the destination. Destination is where you want the data to be populated once it's segregated. So if by default it will start from the same cell. So if I just click on finish now, it will change my original data to a column data. Let's say if I want to retain the original data, I will select my destination cell as something else. Okay, so in that case it will retain my original data as well as give me, and I click on the finish button and it will give me the segregated column wise data as well. So you can see that it has segregated the text in the text format and the data in the numbers format, and my data has been segregated, right? So it's as simple and easy as that. So next time when you are copying or populating data from a PDF, do remember to use this function to segregate your data into different column. I hope it was clear. Let's move on to the next function, which is one of the very important feature or very useful feature of the Excel. It's called data validation. As the name specifies, this function helps us in validating our data. Now generally this function is used when we have to create a template, a survey or a form which will be filled by someone else, not by the person who is developing this file, but by someone else who will be inputting the data to this columns, to this files or surveys or template. So let's say you have created a template and you have circulated it among your colleague or within your office to be filled in by the different employees, right? So this is where we will use this function. Let's understand what is data validation, how to use it, and what are the different features of the data validation. Let's start with an example. So let's say I want this form to be filled by some of the students. Okay, so they will have student name, so they will enter in their name, they will have the ID number, okay, gender, course applied, etc. So let's start with an example on ID number. So I want the student to fill their ID, which I know is a 5-digit number. Okay, so I know that the student ID cannot be less than or greater than 5, but it happens that by mistake a student can enter a wrong number. Okay, he might interpret the ID number as, let's say, a roll number or something, which will not be a 5-digit number, and he might end up populating that number in this column. So I want student to specify that the ID number has to be a 5-digit number, and if by mistake, either intentionally or unintentionally, student is entering a wrong number, I want Excel to pop up the error for me. Okay, so this is what a data validation is as in simple example. So let's see how do we do that. So again, I am in the data tab, data tool cluster, and I am clicking on data validation. Okay, you see that there are 3 options. We will study the other 2 options, but right now let's understand the data validation command. I click on data validation and I see this window with 3 tabs: settings, input message, and error alert. Within setting, we have the validation criteria, which has a list of features, which has a list of validation criteria. So here, since my student ID will be the whole number, I click on the whole number. The moment I click on whole number, Excel asks me to define the limit, that is the minimum or the maximum number which a person can enter in this particular cell. So since it has to be a 5-digit number, I say that my minimum will be 1 and 40, that is 10,000, and my maximum digit can be 5 times 9. Okay, and I click on OK. Right. So now a data validation has been created for this cell. Yes, it's not visible, it's something which works at the background. But let's say now the student enters the number 1, 2, 4, 5. This is a 4-digit number, and you see that Excel throws an error. Okay, that it will not allow the student to enter the number. And if I fill in a 5-digit number, you see that the data has been accepted without throwing any error. Right. So this data validation will be activated only when you make an error in inputting the data as per the validation criteria which has been created by the user. Right. Even if I try and fill a 6-digit number, you see that Excel will throw an error. Right. So once you have created the validation, this is a simple example of how to create a data validation. Once you have created the validation, if let's say want to remove the validation, you again open the same tab, that is the data validation, and you click on clear all. The moment you click on clear all, you see that the validation criteria is gone. You click on OK, and now it doesn't matter whatever data you enter, there is no validation criteria and Excel will accept the number. Right. So as you can imagine that this is a very useful feature, and it removes the nightmare of the people who are maintaining the data, because if the data has been entered correctly, there will be no time spent or wasted on clearing or sanitizing or cleansing the data. Clear? So this is one simple example on how does the data validation work. Let's explore it further. Okay, so before I move on to the other field settings within data validation, that is the other validation criteria, let us understand these 2 tabs also. One is my input message, the other is the error alert. Now what is this input message? An input message is a very simple window. Okay, so whatever message you input here along with the title will appear on the cell once you place your cursor on that. Let's see what I am talking about. So I give it a title, let's say student ID. I give an input message, please enter your 5-digit student ID number. Okay, and I click on OK. Fine. So you see that if I place my cursor on any other cell, I will not see any input message. But the moment the user activates the cell which has been validated with an input message, you will see the title and the input message whatever you have created. So this will help the user in understanding what data needs to be filled in here. Right. So you can also specify where in the particular document etc. it appears. So it will help the user to fill the data, the correct data as you want them to fill in. Yeah, so that's about the input message. Now let's see the third tab, which is my error alert. This is very important. So there are 3 styles of error alert: stop, warning, and information. Okay, a stop will, again let's give it a title. Let me say student ID, and let's give an error message. Please enter only 5-digit number. Okay, so this is the error message I am giving, so that if someone is making an error by mistake, they know what error they are exactly making, and I say OK. Right. So now you see that if I enter a wrong number, okay, what happened? Oh, I'm so sorry, I have entered the error alert, but I have not created the validation. We cleared the validation if you remember, right? So let me re-enter the validation. This is somewhere between 10,000 and 999. Sorry, 5 times 9. So let me re-enter the number, and you see that I get an error alert, the message which I have entered in the error alert tab. Please enter only 5-digit number, and it says either retry, that is you retry and re-enter the right number, or you cancel the data entry, or you click on help. Okay, fine. So let's understand the other two styles. So one is the stop. So as you saw, that stop doesn't allow you to enter the data or proceed until and unless you enter the correct data. The second option is your warning. Okay, in the warning you see that the logo changed. Okay, you can again leave the input and message and title as same. So let's see how is it different from stop. Now if I enter the wrong data, you will see that Excel just gives you a warning. Okay, it says that there is a warning, please enter only 5-digit number, but it asks you or allow you to continue. So if you click on yes, it will still accept the invalid data, right? So that's the difference between the stop and the warning. Let's see the third option or the third style, which is your information. Again, you leave the title and error message. The difference here is that now if you enter the wrong message, Excel will just give you an information that for your kind information this is wrong, but the moment you click on OK, it allows you to continue. It doesn't even ask you whether you want to continue or not, but the only option there is either to continue, that is OK, or cancel the data. Clear? So these are the three kinds of error message or error alert we can create for our user depending upon the stringiness or depending upon the stringency of the data which we want the user to enter. So if you want the data to be only as per the validation criteria, use stop style, else give a warning, or else finally give an information. Clear? Okay. So let's continue and explore the other validation criteria. So we have seen the whole number. Okay. Decimal is again self-explanatory. So here you can choose to give what is the number of decimal you will allow the user to input. Right. So this will help you in choosing the maximum and the minimum value along with the amount of decimal you want them to allow. Of course, here the student ID will not be a decimal number, it will only be a whole number. Okay, now let's understand the next function, which is called a list function. I'll give an example before I explain you what is that. Okay, let's move on to the third column of my form. Sorry, wherein the user need to enter their gender. Okay, so now we know that with respect to the gender, the options are very limited, right? So either the person will enter male, female, or in most cases, or in some cases, they can decide not to disclose the gender. Okay, so we have transgender, transsexual, etc. So he may choose to not enter any gender. So we will give a third option saying don't want to disclose. So these are the three options. There can be maximum 4 or 5 options here, right? So the number of options is limited. So here I will use something called a list function. So how I will do that? I'll click on again I am in setting tab. I will click on list. Okay, the moment I click on list, Excel asks me the source of list, that what are the 3-4 options you want to give to the user to select from. So I write it manually, male. I segregate the first option from the second by using a comma, and then my second option is, or my second drop down will be female. My third will be don't want to disclose. You can see that it's not required to put this text in a inverted comma because this is just a source data and it need not be in inverted comma. And I click on OK, right? The moment I click on OK, you see that Excel gives me a drop down button. Okay, so the moment I activate this cell, I see this drop down button, and from this drop down button I can select either of the 3 options, right? So let's say female, right? So if you see and done, you see that if I want to enter any other data, let's say if by mistake I write something else, Excel will throw me an error alert. So it will not allow you to enter any data other than the drop down options which you have created for the user, right? Similarly, let's say if I want to select the courses applied, so it's already created there. Let me first clear it. So you know how to clear the validation now. You just click on the data validation and click on clear all and OK, right? Now the drop down button is gone. So let's say I want to create the courses applied. So again, the courses applied will be limited option, whatever courses the institute is offering. So again, I will use the list function. Okay. Now again, I can enter the source data either manually, or I have a simple option that I go and select the source data from a Excel sheet. Okay, from Excel cell. and do remember to put your different options in different cells. Okay, so the whatever number of courses you have should each option should be in a different cell, and I click on OK. Right, the moment you click OK, you see this drop down button along with the 3 courses which you have selected from the list, which you have given reference in the Excel cell. Clear? So again I can select any of them. If I try and punch in any other data, Excel will throw me an error. Clear? Okay, now what is the advantage of using this reference cell rather than hard punching the data? There is both advantage and disadvantage. The advantage is that I can change this reference. So let's say instead of BBM, I now decide I change the course names to BMM. Okay, the moment I change the data here, since it's a linked reference, you will see that it has been changed to BMM here also. Right? The disadvantage, as I said, is let's say if someone comes and enters a row here. Okay, so the moment you enter a row here, Excel will expand the cell reference and it will also create a blank cell here, as you can see. Right? Now the option to minimize this kind of error is that you create this data validation list. If you are linking it to a cell, in case you are creating a list, it's always better to create a separate tab and give all your list and refer it to, or link your cell, link your list sources to that particular tab itself, rather than linking it in the same tab, which has a chances of being getting manipulated. Clear? Anyway, so we have understood some of the validation criteria. Decimal, whole number, list. List is very important because many of the time when you want your data to be input by someone else and there are 2-3 options, you always prefer to give a list along with the drop down button. So it's really useful and helpful. Okay, let's move on. Taking another example, so expected date of joining. Let's say my expected date of joining is 60 days from today. So I want user to only enter a date which is 60 days from today. So let's see how we do that. I go to data validation, I click on date. Okay, so it says start date. So since my start date is today, today will be flexible. So I use an inbuilt Excel function called today, and I open and close the bracket. Sorry, my mistake, spelling error. Okay, so I say today and I open and close the bracket. This is an inbuilt Excel function which will give you the date as on today. So if you write today on any single cell and open and close the bracket, you will get the date as of today. My end date will be today. Okay, that is date as on today plus 60 days, because as I said, the student can join within 60 days from the date he is filling on the form. So I am giving an option that his expected date of joining has to be within 60 days. So I give a formula today plus 60 and I click on OK. Right? Now let's try and fill in a data. Do remember that by default the data format is month, DD and YYYY. So I say 01, that is my month. Today is 30th January 2015, so I say 30, and or let's say 31, and I say 2015. Okay, so it accepts the date. Let me try and put a date of a week back. So let me try and put 01 for month, 23, that is 23rd of January 2015, and you see that Excel throws an error because the date has to be 60 days from today and not past today. Okay. So let me try and put a future date, let's say 31st March. So will it take 31st March? No, because 31st March falls beyond 60 days from today. Let me try it. So 03, that is March 31st, 2015. Okay, it takes. It will accept the data because February has 28 days plus 1 from January plus 31. So let me try and put in a date from April, that is 04 12th April 2015, and you see that I get an error message. Clear? So this is how you can again create a validation for the date entry. Let's continue. Time works exactly in the same manner as your date. Okay, so that's the one and the same thing. Text length, you see that the moment I put in a text length, Excel says that enter a minimum and the maximum text length. So this is useful when you have a comment column. Okay, so when you are creating a form or something and you have a column for the comment or remarks, right, and you want to limit the data entry to a given number of characters, this is where you can use the text length feature, right. So text length will allow the user to only enter the given number of text. So if I say, let's say minimum should be 50, okay, so participant will have to enter some words of 50 characters minimum and maximum will be 200, and you click on OK. Right. So this is, this covers all the other validation criteria except for the custom. So let's try and understand what is a custom. Okay. The moment I click on custom, you see that now I have a something called formula here, right? Yes, it is possible that. So custom options within data validation allows you to create a validation limit or criteria by writing down a formula rather than selecting one of the default validation criteria here, right? So let's look at an example and understand how do we write the formula and how does this entire custom validation works. Let me take this example. Let's continue with that. So I want student to enter the ID number. Okay, but again we know that the ID number cannot be repetitive, right? That is a given one student ID will be available to only one student. So if by mistake a student is entering a student ID number which is already existing, I want Excel to throw the error for me. Okay, so let's see how do we create that. I select my cell where I want to create my validation. I click on data validation. Okay, I go to custom. Okay, it's already created. I'm so sorry. Let me clear it first. Okay, let me just check whether it's created for the rest of the cells as well. Okay, and I say clear all, and okay, fine. So I want to create my data validation, that is unique ID only, and I click on data validation and I go to custom. Okay. Now here, rather than a formula or a function, which is readily available, we have to use and apply our common sense and logic to derive a formula using most of the functions, numeric or text or other data function which we have studied, to develop a formula which will meet our criteria, which will help us understand the criteria. Okay, so we need to create a formula. Let's see, we will see what formula we will use for this particular example. The second thing you need to remember about this formula bar here is that the output of the formula, whatever formula you write, no matter how big, the output has to be either true or false, right? So if it's true, okay, Excel will accept the entry. If it's false, if the output of the formula is false, Excel will throw an error. This is what we want, right? We want the data to be validated. So validation means either true or false, either it's validated or not validated. So if it's false, not validated, Excel will throw an error. Clear? The third thing to remember about this formula function is formula bar is that if you write a formula and open the bracket, okay, Excel will not throw the functions argument, right? Normally when you write a formula in a cell, you see that you write if and you open the bracket and you can see all the function arguments listed here, right? So you know which function argument to enter when, right? In data validation, you don't have that option. Okay, so here in formula, if you write any formula name and open the bracket, you will not see the function arguments listed below, right? So that's one of the limitation here. So if you really want to write a formula and if you don't remember the function argument, it's simple. You can first write the formula in a cell, okay, along with the functions argument, and then you can copy and paste it here. Okay, that's one option you can use. Okay, now let's continue with our example. So in this example, I want Excel to check whether the entered ID is unique or not. Okay, so it will be unique means it will appear only once, right? So what I will do is I'll write a formula asking Excel to check or count how many times this particular student ID is appearing. So I will use a countIf function. Okay, so on what basis it will count? It will count based on the criteria given here. Okay, so if you remember the countIf function, in the countIf function, or if you don't remember, just type it on an Excel cell and check it. The first argument is your cell reference, criteria range. So this is my criteria range. I have to give a range wherein it will go and check, and I will freeze this range. Okay, I give a comma. So my second argument is the criteria. So what will be my criteria? The ID which has been entered by the user. So this particular cell will be my criteria, and I close the bracket. So this particular function, that is check whether, count if B13 is appearing in B13 to B17 or not. How many times it is appearing. So Excel will give me either 1, 2 or 3 or 4. But as I said, the output of this formula bar can only be either true or false. So I have to give it a logical condition. I say that this has to be less than or equal to 1. Okay, so if it's true, Excel will accept. That means it's a unique ID and Excel will accept the entry. If it's not less than or equal to 1, Excel will throw an error. So if let's say a student is entering an ID twice, so that means the countIf will give an answer of 2. 2 is not less than equal to 1, so it's false. If it's false, Excel will throw up a error alert, right? So this is how we write a formula within a data validation, right? So let me click on OK. Okay, I hope I have entered the criteria here rather than in some other cell. No, I entered it in this cell. Okay, we will just see how to copy paste the validation criteria if by mistake we have entered it somewhere else. So let me just, I don't remember which cell I entered it into. So let me just do one thing. Select all this cell, click on data validation. Okay, I say no. We will see what is that. It's still not appearing. Okay, never mind. Let me rewrite the formula. So I click on custom and I write my formula equal to countf. Okay, I give it a criteria range. Okay, I give it a criteria. I close the bracket. Don't forget to freeze this criteria range, else your Excel will not work for the rest of the cells. Okay, I check whether this is equal to or less than 1 and I click on OK. Right. So first of all, what I would like to do is I have created data validation only for this cell. Okay, I want it to be copied for the rest of the cell as well. Okay, rest of the cell wherever I'll enter the input, no matter how many number of cells. So what I will do is I will select all these 5 cells. Okay, I'll click on data validation and you see that Excel itself will ask you, do you want to extend data validation to this cell? So you can click yes, because here you do want to copy and the validation criteria will be copied. The other option is you select this cell where you have already entered the data validation. You copy this cell by clicking Ctrl C. Ctrl C means copy. Okay. You select the rest of the cells where you want this validation criteria to be created and press Ctrl Alt V. Okay. Ctrl Alt V is basically keyboard shortcut for this paste special window. We will study this paste special window in detail in one of the future classes, but right now just understand that here one of the criteria is validation. So what will this do is it will only copy the validation criteria and not the formula or the values, and I click on OK and it's done. Right. So I have copy pasted the validation criteria for the rest of the cell. If you want to check, place your cursor on any of the cell, click on data validation and you will see that the validation criteria is already there. Clear? Okay, now let's check whether the formula is correct or not, whether we have entered the right validation formula or not. So I'll try and re-enter the number which is already existing, 29906. Okay, so 29906 you can see is appearing here, and let me try and press enter. You see that I get an error message, right? So Excel will not allow me to enter a student ID which is already appearing, right? Let me try and press enter any other number, 29907, and you see that Excel will allow me to enter the data. Clear? So this is an example of how we write a custom formula within data validation. Okay. One thing which you need to remember about data validation is that the data validation will be effective only once you have entered the validation criteria. What I mean is that if there is any input, okay, which has been created before you have entered the data validation criteria, Excel will not go and check that input criteria. It will not throw an error for already existing input. Okay, let me give you an example along with another example of the custom formula. Okay, so let me first create a error data. So 29906. Okay, again it throws an error because I guess the data validation has been created by me already. So let me clear it. Okay, and let me re-enter the data 29906. Okay, so now you see that there are, the student ID is appearing twice. So we will see what will Excel do about it, how to check that thing. Okay, now I am extending my custom requirement for data validation. That is, I want it to be a unique ID, but I also want to make sure that it's 5-digit only. We know how already we have seen an example that how to create a formula for existing a 5-digit validation criteria. But here I want it to be not only 5-digit, but also I also want the ID to be a unique ID. Okay, so let's see what formula we can write for that. So you can choose the cell. Okay, or let me select one cell at a time and then we'll copy paste the validation criteria. I go on custom and now I have to decide what formula to write. Whatever formula you write, do remember that the output has to be either true or false and nothing else. No value, no text, nothing. So if I have more than one condition to check, I will use AND function. Okay, you are already aware of the AND function by now. So I am using an AND function and I am giving my first logical check. So what is my first logical test, or what is my first criteria or condition? That this ID has to be a 5-digit number. So I say check the length. You are also aware of the length function which we covered in the text function class. Length function basically counts the number of character in the given cell. So I am saying the length of this cell, okay, that is the length of the data in this cell, has to be equal to 5. Neither less than 5 nor greater than 5, but has to be exactly equal to 5. So that's my first condition. I give a comma for my second condition. My second condition will remain same, that is COUNTIF. Okay, I give it a criteria range. I freeze this thing. Okay, I give it a criteria. The criteria is the data from this cell. Okay, it will keep changing. So if you are entering the data in B22, it will automatically shift the reference, because I am not freezing this cell B21, and I close the bracket and I say this should be less than or equal to 1. Okay, so I have given it two conditions. The first condition is that the length should be equal to 5. Second, that the count of the ID should be less than equal to 1. Okay, and I click on OK. Fine. First, the first thing I will do is I will copy paste this data validation for the rest of the cell by clicking Alt Control V, and I click on validation and I click on OK. Right. So now my validation criteria has been copied for the rest of the cells. Now let's try and, okay, first of all you see that I have created the validation. So now if I try and enter a wrong number, that is 29906, you see that Excel will throw an error. But since 29906, which is a repeat ID, was already appearing, Excel will not do anything about it. So this is what I was talking about. Okay, we will see how to check whether the how to check for this kind of data in a while. Okay, so you have seen that this is working. Let me try and input less than 5 digit. You see that the error is there. Let me try more than 5 digit, and again we see an error. Right. So it will not accept any data which is not 5 digit, or it will not accept any repetitive ID also, right? So we have created the right formula. Okay, now how to check this this error message which is already there. Now let's come to the other part of the data validation. You see the second option called circle invalid data. The moment you click on this, whatever data is invalid as per the validation criteria created by the user will be circled. Okay, so you see that whatsoever was the invalid data has been circled by the Excel for us. If you want to remove this circle, you again click on clear validation criteria. Clear? Okay, so let's look at the last example about the custom validation, and then we will close this third class for the data function. Okay, in this example, I want student to enter their name but without any extra spaces. So by extra spaces, I mean any extra spaces before the name or after the name, or more than 2 gap between the name and the surname. So this will be an extra spaces counted for me. So I want to make sure that Excel doesn't take any extra spaces when the student are entering their name. Okay. So again I go to data validation. Okay. I'm so sorry guys. This is basically when I take multiple classes, so it gets recorded. Yeah. Okay. So now let me enter the data validation. I go to data validation. I go on custom, and I click on formula. So what will be my formula in this case? My formula will be that, okay, first of all, if I don't want any extra spaces, which inbuilt function in Excel we will use? You are absolutely right, we will use the trim function. Trim function checks for any extra spaces in between the formula. But again, if I simply use a trim function and I give reference to this cell, okay, Excel will throw me a trimmed version of this cell, if any, right? But that's not the output we want. We want our output to be either true or false. So I say that this cell has to be equal to trim of this cell. If not, Excel will throw an error, else it will not. Okay, I will copy paste the data for rest of the cell. Okay, by clicking Control Alt V, click on validation, and I click on OK. Right, now the validation criteria has been copied. So let's try and enter in a wrong data, that is space Amit, and Excel throws an error. Let me try and put in Amit space, and you see that Excel throws an error. Let me put Amit space Agarwal, and again the Excel throws an error. Right. So this is how I have created a trim function to make sure that there are no extra spaces when the students are entering their name. Right. Okay guys, so this is how we work on the custom data validation tab. Okay. I hope it was useful, and next time whenever you are creating a file wherein data has to be entered by the end user and not by you, Please make sure that you create a list if required, you create various kind of data validation, etc., along with the input message and the error alert. Okay, so this will help the user feed in the right data, and it will save your time from data maintenance or data cleansing. I hope you enjoyed the class. See you in the next class for the 4th class of the data function, which I hope will be the last class. Thank you so much. Have a nice day ahead. Bye bye.